Now let us invite Sister Tzu Chi to share with us the summary of the past 2 weeks session. Yeah, over to you, Sister Tzu Chi.感恩.
Good morning. Okay, I have my slide already. Okay, this is my sharing from 2 weeks ago. Brother Joe spoke about the 7 parables. The 7 parables of the Lotus Sutra are to make the Buddha's words easier to understand. People remember stories and can relate more when they can recall and comprehend. The parable of the burning house narrates about people in a burning house but are not aware. Maybe they do not know how to escape. Perhaps they simply do not care. The second parable of the lost son describes the parent guiding his lost son back to an inheritance of unlimited treasure which the child had won. The parable of the medicinal herbs talks about the rain coming down equally to all plants, but the level of absorption depends on the sizes of the roots and the trunk. The parable of the phantom city speaks about the students and the teacher. The students are tired and want to turn back, but are persuaded to move forward together. The parable of the jewel in the robe recalls a hidden jewel, and the man never caught on until he was made aware that he had this precious item with him all along. The sixth parable of the precious pearl in the top knot had a king rewarded its generals with a precious gift. After the generals had defended the kingdom in campaigns that were brave and swift. The last parable of the skillful doctor is about the relationship between father and his children who are ill. He left good medicine for them to take, and finally they did with goodwill. The stories are crafted to present the Dharma so the layman can relate. It is a form of skillful means that the Buddha has designed to effectively communicate. Then there was a sign language performance and sharing by 3 sisters. Sister Kaping, Sister Angeline, and Sister Moylin shared their experience. Being part of the multi-location across the seas, pure heart sign language performance. Each are unique, but with commonalities as the sisters recall how they got started, to be skillful and enjoying the process of learning when they are true-hearted. All had initial barriers they had to overcome. It was time and effort and even shyness for some. But with determination and a good steady teacher, the barriers ceased, and with each passing week, their confidence level increased. There is grace and beauty with the flow of every gesture. Overcoming the beginning shyness was triumphantly mastered. Being mindful and conscious about learning were the side effects of this. Such was the journey of learning, the 3 sisters happily and joyfully reminisced. So that was 2 weeks ago. Last week, the sharing was on this. Brother Johan spoke last week about the 4 Noble Truths, which are all related to suffering. The first is the truth that identifies its presence in this life that we are living. The second seeks to determine the causes at the root are ignorance and unsatiated cravings. The third speaks of a transcendent state to reach spiritual enlightenment. The fourth charts the Noble Eightfold Path as its method of attainment. The Buddha has not hidden his teachings, no, not at all. It is us, the hearers, that pick and choose to follow or fall. Like a new phone, we often think we know the functions already, but we end up 80% of the time using just 20% of the phone's capability. But the truth is still there for us to at any time gain access. If we do, when we do, then in life we will positively progress. Last week, Sister Lim also shared on the Tzu Chi Humanistic Youth Center in Singapore. Sister Cheng introduced us to the HYC in Tzu Chi, Singapore, a center of well-being truly made for one and all. Sister Cheng is very diligent in guiding us through a sampling of the things that the HYC did and continue to do. Creating a working space for persons and companies for their convenience, to have a beautiful working space with the right serene ambience. Just a year in, there were so many participatory art projects involving locals and non-citizen groups to very exciting and positive effects, providing a home to stranded Malaysians to touch base and belong, connecting people as a family in 242 events and 32,300 participants strong. Through exhibitions and talks and workshops and enrichment classes, the HYC has truly become a community center for the masses. Another meaningful initiative are workshops addressing mental health, a silent and unseen and unspoken disease that is robbing society's spiritual wealth. By providing support and surfacing the issue, HYC hopes to touch more lives. This is another effective project for society that can one day be duplicated from the archives. Community partners from schools and farms and institutes of higher learning is a testament to the valuable work that the HYC has been doing. The HYC is just a place. Its contributions are materialized through the hands of many, and its stories are inspiring the rest of us through this morning's sharing of Sister Chun's testimony. And that's it from me this week. I shall stop sharing and hand back to Sister Lily. I hope Brother Joe is already here. He is. Over to you, Brother Joe.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Tzu Chi. Thank you. Wonderful to hear the summary for the past 2 weeks. Really brought us back to what we had gone through, and that's what Master always told us, right? To remember, not just remember what happened years and years and years ago, but also remembering what we have done just the last 2 weeks. And for all the sharings, it brought back memories of the three sisters performing the sign language, and also sharing, not performing. Performance was done by more people, but the sharing told us how difficult it was and how people overcame the difficulties. And then the sharings from last week about the Humanistic Youth Center, which I couldn't finish, but before I couldn't finish the whole thing. But before I left, it was just wondrous to see how the youth center was able to do so much for all these people, and how to design. I never knew the doorless entrance and all of the different designs, and you looked at it and you just realized how much effort was put into it. It's not so much about how shiny the result was, but you look at how much effort and how mindful people put into every single detail. And I think that's something that we should take to heart. And that's also connected to what I'm sharing today. So last week, as Sister Tzu Chi so poetically shared with us, last week we talked about the Four Noble Truths. And very quickly, we talked about the truth of suffering, which I believe, in my own opinion, in my own understanding, very limited understanding, was about knowing about what is happening around us. And if you learn more from this knowing, then you know this suffering is really impermanent, that everything is changing, and suffering ultimately caused by unknown and impermanence. So whether you are enjoying your life right now, know that it's impermanent. Whether you are suffering or having difficulties, know that it's also impermanent. Know that it's also unknown, and we don't know what's going to happen. The truth of the origins of suffering tells us that if you go in deeper to figure out why this phenomenon is happening. That is the understanding of the origin, where it came from. But ultimately, there's another part about the origin of suffering, and that is called the effects of accumulation. That it's not only knowing that the origin of suffering comes from our the afflictions, but also know that it's accumulated a little bit at a time, and throughout a long time. It doesn't happen right away, but it happens throughout time. So no matter what big or small, no matter how big or small, things accumulate. So the truth of suffering tells you that the phenomenon, to let you know the phenomenon. The truth of the origin tells you where it came from and how it accumulates through time, no matter how big or small. The truth of the end of suffering, in my mind, it tells you a conviction. It shows a conviction that, do you want to end this? Do you have the conviction? Do you have the vow to end this? Are you willing to put in the strength? Are you willing to put in the courage that is necessary to end this suffering now that you know the phenomena, now that you know where it came from? And the end, if you want to do this, this is how you can do this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's what we talked about last week. And last week, we also had the open session at the end to ask people, what do you think this world mostly needs? Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. Also, we're going to go through something that is more familiar to us, a concept that is familiar to us. And then I'm going to share with you what I think. I'm going to pose the question. I'm going to give you my opinion on my answers. And then I'm going to open to all of you to share with everybody else what you think the answer is and why. Okay, so today we're going to talk about something very straightforward, something that everybody has been talking about, which is 因缘果报, the cause, condition, effect, and consequences. Now, I'm not going to go in too much about the definitions of each word, because I think most of us probably are very well versed in this. So I'm not going to go into the definition of how each word means, but rather today, I want to talk about control. So for everything there are always cause, condition, effect, and consequences, right? At this moment, we are planting a cause. At this moment, we are fomenting the conditions. At this moment, we are receiving the effects of what we have done in the past. And at this moment, we are making our minds about what that effect means to us, and that is consequence. So we probably know, or we might not be able to articulate it. We might not be able to say it definitively, but we know what these 4 words mostly mean and how they're connected. Today, we're going to be talking about which one that are really in our control. Now, I think about 20 years ago, roughly about 20 years ago, probably even more. Let me think. Yeah, even more than 20, about 23 years ago, there was a movie that came out, and that the movie's name is called The Matrix. And it uses heavily, it has a lot of religious references. It has a lot of Buddhist and also Catholic references in its own content. And a lot of it is really talking about 因缘果报, reincarnation, the cause, condition, effect, and consequences. Now, I'm only mentioning it because we're seeing this trailer coming out for Matrix number 4 that is coming out on Christmas. But anyway, that's not the point for today. I'm just saying, okay? So today we're going to talk about which ones are in our control. Now, most of these content were actually shared back in, I think, 5 years ago, 2016, more than 5 years ago. I shared this to sort of open up this understanding. And I think in the past 5 years, when I went back to look at what I had said or the content that I used 5 years ago, it really brought back a lot of memory about what I was thinking. And a lot of things didn't change, but I also added in something that is more recent, the thoughts from recent, my own thought about the four cause of condition, effect, and consequence. Okay, so we know that cause or a seed, that's usually the metaphor that we use. The cause is something that is set in the past. Okay, it's immutable. Where we are today, if we are holding an apple, you cannot change the seed from which this apple is grown from. You cannot change that. So if you're holding an apple in your hand, that apple cannot be changed to say, oh, I don't want this apple. I want a pineapple. Well, it's too late because you already planted that seed, an apple seed, in the past. And it has grown into an apple tree with which you get this apple from. Okay, so that is something that's already immutable. However, the current cause that you can set right now, you can still choose. So even though the current apple, you cannot change its cause, you can change the cause that is for tomorrow or the next month. You can choose to plant the seed of pineapple today. So even though you cannot change the past cause, you can change the cause for the future. Okay, so remember, I'm not trying to define the four characters. I'm merely trying to talk about which ones do we have control over. Okay, so using a different perspective to talk about something that we already know and familiar with is a different way to cut and slice and maybe gain more insight into what they are trying to say and what we are learning. Condition. I believe that condition is talking about our effort to make the result or the effect go one way or the other. What I'm trying to say is that once you plant something like an apple seed was already planted, the seeds were planted. And what you can do, you cannot change that seed because it was already planted. The only way that you can do is to water it and, to provide with fertilizer, to provide with the best growing condition. That is the best thing that we can, those are the things that we can do. We can tend to it. We can make sure that we can weed out all the unnecessary and the not helpful, the weeds around it. That's what we can do. Okay, that foments the condition that is favorable or not so favorable. For example, you don't do anything about the land. You don't do anything about the condition. You don't try to improve it. If there's water that comes, if there's flooding, if there's too much sun, if there's not enough water, if there's a lot of pests, you just let it go, right? You just let it grow on its own, right? As if the seed just fell from the tree and it landed there, no one to tend to it in nature. That's what happened, right? The condition that is set forth by nature. Or you can put in your effort to make it so that it's more watery, so that it contains more moisture, whatever it is, that's the condition that with our effort, we can try to make the result go one way or the other. Okay, so condition is our effort. Is that something that we can control? Ask ourselves this question. Next, effect. This is the result that is determined by the cause and the condition, right? So the effect is now the apple is grown, or the apple is ripe, or the apple was not there because of whatever the situation. So this is the effect, and it comes out, right? Apple, whether it comes out or apple doesn't come out, or the tree doesn't grow, the tree does grow. That is the result, yes or no, or whatever the things that might happen. So do we have control over this? I'm going to talk about that later. So we know what the effects are, right? You plant the seed of apple, you're going to get an apple. You plant the seed of pineapple, you're going to get a pineapple, right? You did something, this is the effect. The condition is something that you can try to make it better or make it worse, depending on what you're trying to do. However, there are so many other conditions that are unknown to you, to us, to anyone. There's also so many conditions that even though you know, but you can't change. And there are so many conditions that you know and you can change. And there are even more conditions that you don't know, but you're changing. Okay, so that's why can we change? Can we possibly have control over the effect when there are so many conditions that we're either blinded by or we have unknowingly or knowingly changing? Consequence, how the effect is perceived. So now we have an apple and it's big, it's juicy, and it's sweet. Do you like it? What do we do about it? Are we grateful? Now we have an apple that is sour, that is small, and that is not being sold favorably on the market. What do we do about this? That's the consequence. How you perceive the effect, how you perceive this particular thing that happens. Do we have control over this? So there is a causality cycle, right? So that's what I talked about earlier, and everybody knows this. The cause will eventually becomes the effect, which begets more causes, and there's a cycle, and we should be very familiar with this. And I just kept this slide from 5 years ago, right? I always thought about it's great to know all the terminology. It's great to look into all the words and what it means. But what I truly want to talk about is, at the end of the day, what does that matter, right? Knowing the causality, knowing the cause, the condition, the consequences, and the effects and the consequences. What does that mean? How does it apply? So 5 years ago, I asked these questions because I don't want to just let it stop at academia, just talk about this, research and feel, philosophy. Let's not philosophically assume what it means. Let's talk about what it matters. How does it matter to you? And so how are we affected by these 4 words, right? So we talked about which one can we have control over and how are we affected by them? And this is the conclusion that I reached 5 years ago. Knowing why, knowing where it came from, knowing that the seed was already planted in the past, knowing that there are conditions that we can control and there are conditions that's out of our control, knowing that there are conditions that we know of, knowing that there are conditions that we won't know, and knowing that there are conditions where we don't know, yet we have control, that we are changing unknowingly. Now that we know there's so many things that's out of our control, that is knowing the why. And if you go back to last week, when we talk about the second noble truth, which is knowing the origins of the suffering, now we know that there's so many factors that could be contributing to all the things of how if the apple is going to grow. There are things that's within our control, and there are things that's outside of our control. And there are things that we didn't know would control this. And there are things that we know would control, but we are unknowingly controlling it. So there's so many things out there we don't know, so many factors, right? But knowing the why, same thing, going back to last week, knowing the origins of suffering allow us to know how we can change and how we can stop it. Same thing, knowing all these causality allows us to know how we can change ourselves. So now going into today's question, cause, condition, effect, and consequence. The question that I pose for all of you today is, there are also, once again, 3 questions. You can choose to answer all 3, or you can choose to answer only 1 of the 3 or 2 of the 3. That is okay. But you have to give an explanation for why. The first question, which of the 4 do we have the most control over? Second question, which of the 4, which is the cause, condition, effect, and consequence, which of the 4 do we have the least control? And once again, there's no right answer. There are only answers with your explanation, your perspective, your experience. There's no right or wrong, but you must explain what you meant, okay? Third question, no longer talking about just us, but talking about in the greater world, in our lives, in our world right now. Which one of the 4 do you think we need to control the most? Now, you could be talking about yourself again, which is fine. I don't mind if you talk about me, I need to control the cause right now because blah, 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 blah. Or you can talk about the world as a whole. We need to control what the most. Okay. So before we go into everybody, as customary, I'm going to share with you my answer to give you some time to formulating your own answer. So allow me about 7 minutes to explain my answer. And then I'm going to pass it over to you. And we're going to probably end around 7:30 so that we can have Sister June sharing with us, 7:30 or 7:35. Okay, so look at these questions, and I'm going to share with you my opinion about the three. First question, which of the four do we have the most control? Now, at the very first glance, okay, you can choose. You can choose what kind of seed you put in, right? So this is what you have the most control over. I'm not talking about the past. I'm not talking about, oh, I'm holding an apple, so I can choose in the past 6 months ago, the seed that I choose. I can't, but I have the most control over the cause right now. At the very first glance, that is what we have the most control over. Okay, so that was my first answer. Not right, not wrong, but I'm just sharing with you the process, the entire flow. So at first glance, I think that we have the most control is the cause that I'm planting now. Okay, then I thought about the effect. I have the most control on the effect. Why? Because in the past, for the seeds that was already there, right? I can do everything that I can to make it so that the apple comes out bigger, so the apple comes out juicier, sweeter, so I can have more apples or less apples, bigger apples, red apples, yellow apples, right? We can now change that. We can now change the effect to how we like it. So now we have many, many things. And I'm not saying, I'm not condoning this. I'm not saying it's better or worse or good or bad. I'm just saying that now we have these genetically controlled vegetables, fruits. For example, oh gosh, I'm at loss for words. So what is that? Okay, so for example, like mango, okay, like mango or pineapple, okay, I don't know why I forgot about pineapple, but it used to be sour, like very, stingy sour, okay, and in Taiwan. And I remember my mom loves the pineapples that we have here in Taiwan, and I always feel it's so sour. And after we eat it, you always have the sores on your tongue because it's so corrosive. But my mom loves it, okay? And every time she would have these pineapple, and she wants to have it, and it would be just so sour. But now the pineapples, they're unbelievably sweet here in Taiwan. And last year, there were stories about Taiwan's pineapple. If you are in Singapore, you probably heard about it. And you probably purchased some to help out Taiwan. I know, thank you all. And you probably got some pineapples that don't come out too good. I also saw the pictures from Singapore. But anyway, so we have control over the effect. We can change how that's going to come out, right? So I thought that we also have control over the effect too. We can choose to engineer to have the apple go one way or the other, make it bigger, make it sweeter, make it red, make it yellow, because we can change the cause and we can change the effect. And then let's think it through. I feel, as I mentioned, there are so many things that is affecting, so many factors that affects the cause, the seed. So many factors, like for example, you think you're planting the seed that's called the apple, but it come out, it might not be something that looks like what its predecessor looks like because something has changed. So you think you have the control over cause, but you don't really have control over cause because so many things are affecting it. We don't know about it. And then on the second thought, you think that you are getting the big apple, the sweet apple, the juicy apple, but things is out of your control. The factors are out of your control. So I eventually thought that the most thing that we have control over is the condition. I can choose to be very diligent, or I can choose to slack off. I can choose to give it a lot of water, or I can choose to not have enough water in the garden. That condition is something that I have control over. And then I thought, maybe not, because I'm only thinking about the conditions that I have control over. There's so many other conditions, like the atmosphere pressure, like the 4 seasons changing, like the climate change that I have no control over. But there are also conditions. There are also conditions that I'm not aware of, like the bees, like the insects, like the entire nature, like the animals, like all the other things that might have a very slight ability to affect the seeds and the apple that I don't know. So on final think it through, I don't think it's cause, I don't think it's effect, I don't think it's condition that I have the most control over. I believe it's the consequence. I believe that the only thing I have control over is how I feel about all the unknown. The first 3 things are telling you that yes, you have finite control. You have very limited control because there are so many things that you don't know. There's so many things that is affecting what comes out. There's so many things that's affecting what you put in. There's so many things that you know or you do not know that is affecting all these things. But the last thing that you have control over is how you feel about this. Yes, you can still feel that how you feel, which is the consequence. Do you like it? Are you grateful? Are you satisfied? Do you want more? That is the consequence. I believe we have the most control is this. Even though our mind is still very elusive and something that we cannot control over simply, but I think we can assert the most control in the consequence. So the second question, which do we have the least control? I believe cause. I believe there are no wrong answers, but the least control that we have, we can't change what's in the past. We also, it's very difficult for us to change, to control over. We have a good intention, but is this really planting a good seed in other people? Maybe they don't receive it. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe you have bad intention, but because you have good affinity, people eventually liked it. We can't choose what actually we planted. And so the third question in our lives, which one do we need to control the most? And I believe it's the same as the first one. I think there's so many impermanent, so many changes, so much unknown in the first 3. The one we need to control is our own emotion in response to all the things that's happening. Because if there is one thing we know, it's impermanence. And how do you react to impermanence? I believe lies in the word consequence. How does our mind respond to all the ever-changing thing? If you can respond well, if you can respond adequately and correctly, or there's no right or wrong, but if you can respond to it in a more that is attuned and fit to the Buddhist teaching, that is what we're talking about. The Buddhist teaching tells you that in a way, out of all the things, not many that we can change, but we can change our attitude towards all the things that is unknown and impermanent. And in a way, that change of attitude will eventually change the things that we couldn't change before. Okay, so that's my answer and that's my response. There's no right or wrong. And now we open the floor up to all of you. We have about at most 20 minutes and open this up to everybody. 3 questions: the cause, condition, effect, and consequence. Which one of the 4 do we or do you have the most control over? It could be the cause. I can choose what I'm going to plant. I can choose what I'm going to think. And that's going to be the cause, the beginning origin. Or you can choose condition. I don't know what was planted, but I will be nice to you. I will be diligent. I will put in the effort. Or I can have control over the effect, or I can have control over the consequence. Now, the flip side, which one do we have the least control? In our lives, which one do we need to take control the most? You can answer all three, or you can choose to answer one of the three. It's up to you, okay? You can plan your own course. You can answer only one or up to three. And you could do that to share with everybody what you think, okay? So I'm going to open this up to ask everybody, okay? To ask everybody what your thoughts are. You can turn on your microphone and I'll call on you to share. And it's something that I think we should be able to hopefully provide something that you can share with everybody. Okay, so I see Sharon, as always, very nice to pose all the synopsis to everybody. And is there anyone that would like to share first? First is always the hardest, but also is the first to share. And a lot of times it's okay if you share the same idea as the person before you, but as the first person, you are the one that says, this is what, the first thing that comes to my mind is this answer. Okay, I'm seeing Robert. Okay, Robert, please.
Yes, I will take the challenge to be the first. Okay, morning to everyone. Yeah, I think the most for question one, I think is my pick is the consequence. The yin yuan guo bao. I think we can have better control on the most control is our consequence. I think is what we do now, or what we have been doing. What we can do. In Tzu Chi. To accumulate our blessings, to accumulate, all these good deeds that we can do. We are seeing suffering. They must have laid the path for us. I think 做就对了. Just do it. As we do it, I think we are also forming all these good affinities with, Brother Joe and every one of us here, and all the sentient beings, and with all the animals and whatnot. We are accumulating blessings, but of course, at the same time, we are still doing it selflessly. Eventually, and hopefully, the things will be better. In times to come, in the next minute, or tomorrow, or the next day. But at the same time, it's also something that is also beyond our control. In our previous life, our cow past of life, we could have killed, could be a butcher, we could have been some, a villain, or we have done something wrong. Like my father always said, I have a very so-called prolonged skin problem called psoriasis. And I've been having it for the past 40 over years. And I've seen so many doctors and so many so-called all sort of medications, it's been there all the time. So finally, my father, he's a very staunch Buddhist. He just said, don't worry, this is something that you have accumulated. You will go away soon. Maybe not this lifetime, next lifetime. Just stay with it, live with it. You don't have the control over it. You just apply whatever medication that you can apply and continue to do good. It will go away one day. So that is my so-called take on it. Yeah,
Wow, thank you, Brother Robert. Thank you so much. Very, very good. And everything you said, I agree with. Not because we share the same answer, but I share your feeling. And thank you so much for giving us that small story at the end. Absolutely, I think absolutely there are 做就对了, no matter what happens in the past. No matter, right? You are good to me, you're bad to me. No matter how this was nice or bad, you're doing the things you need to do. 做就对了. Wonderful use of this, and to answer to this first question. And second question was at least control. You talk about the cause, whatever it is, happily accepted, and therefore we have no change. We can't change it. Wonderful answer. Wonderful answer. Okay, so I think, and as an extension of that, you're saying what you need to control the most is still the consequence because 做就对了. Okay. Thank you, Robert. That was wonderful, wonderful start. Now I'm seeing Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you're next. You raise your hand. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Morning, every brother and sister. Okay. In 3 questions, I choose the first one, the most control, as now pandemic, as now still in pandemic, I'm working as a freelancer. Okay, during I work as freelancers, okay, once you accepting the job, you take the job, you must finish, complete the job in the day, like during working process, I especially working with the deadline, I try to spend some time. I have to spend some time on it to finish my work first. I choose to finish my work first because once you get the job, you can get the effect is you can get some income, and moreover you can get the new experience. So I try to, so once the deadline is given, I try to finish my job first, and other things like leisure, like do like for your hobby and for workout, I just put away first until once I complete the job, then you can continue for the leisure time. The second one is beside the first one, the second one, the less control. Okay, the less control is I want something that I want to change my habitual tendency. For example, I want to think myself 缩小自己, but there are many intangible ways to interrupt me, so it made me difficult to change. But since Hualien, after I heard Master Tzu Chi, there is another voice to tell me that to control myself. So through listening the Dharma, he given me that there's another voice, like the angel. This another voice to tell me that, oh, don't do this, don't do that. Okay, so 感恩 Brother Joe, 感恩 Master teaching. Hope I can learn more in the Bodhisattva path. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Just share with us the most control that we can have is to do what is necessary because we have deadlines. So we need to make sure that we finish them. That's something that we can take control over. We can't control the outcome, but I know I can put in the hard work to make sure that it gets done. The least control Elizabeth mentioned was our habitual tendencies. Even though we hear teachings from Master, even though we hear brothers and sisters sharing, but it's still hard to control. So thank you, Sister Elizabeth. Thank you for your sharing. And I'm going to go back to, I see both Sharon and Tzu Chi to raise your hand, but I'm going to go to Sivamani first on the chat. Sivamani, Rasaya, would you please be able to share with us? You type your response first, and then we're going to go to Sharon, and then Tzu Chi, and then YY. Okay.
Okay.
Please.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. The first one was, first question was, what do we have the most control over? All right. Now, as just now the sister mentioned, this pandemic now. So we have no control, especially in Malaysia, we've got restrictions. We can't go out more than 10 kilometers. So I'm basically stuck at home. And I'm also old, 71 years old. So my husband is very careful. He doesn't want me to go out. So the best thing I can do is to be content, make the best of the situation, do my gardening and keep myself at home, and then keep myself active, mentally active, hopefully by going online, My husband, of course, says I'm spending too much time online, but all right. And he says you have to learn new things, not read your WhatsApp all the time. But that's what I'm doing at home. Okay, the second one was, what do we have the least control? As you said, the past is already set. The seed is already planted. It's immutable. We cannot change that. You just have to accept it. I mean, what we are, my life at the moment is quite comfortable. So I must have done something good. But there are, of course, things that I'm not very happy about, but I have to accept it. Okay, the third question was, which do we need to control the most? As you said, it's the how we react, how we respond, how our mind accepts what is at the moment. All right. So we just have to be happy with it, and that's all. Thank you, Gan.
Thank you. Very, very
Thank you.
clear, very, very direct. And Shivamani, you don't look 71, actually. You don't.
Thank
and
you.
the way, right. I mean,
Thank you.
this is, and I wish the best of health and continue your gardening. And when you're reading WhatsApp, just make sure that, like my eyesight right now, I'm 40 something and my eyesight is already very bad. So make sure that we are all taking care of our eyes, because otherwise we can
Thank
read
you.
more WhatsApp, and that's bad.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you. Very, very clear. Very, very clear. So the first thing Sivamani mentioned is we can do condition, right? We can choose, we're restricted, and we can do what we can. So that's what I have control over. I can put in the effort, but we cannot choose what's in the past. But the third answer is actually the consequences, right? We can choose to react. What we need the most is to control how we react to all these things that's happened. Thank you. Now we're going to Sharon. Let's have Sharon share with us.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Brother Joe. Straight to the question, which do we have the most control? My answer will be effect. Why did I pick effect? I'm just
Yes, why do you pick effect? Yes.
Asking the questions. I'll just use the example of how we here in Australia, we provide meals to the homeless and vulnerables. Now, I feel that when these vulnerable people are queuing up there, waiting to collect meals from us, definitely they are desperate, or else they won't be queuing up there asking for meals. Now, the effect, or why I say effect is that at that moment, they're hungry and we give them food. So the effect is that it fills up their stomach, so they are happy. That's what they need. So I can control the effect, but can't control the causes, of course, because like we don't know what the causes may be. Of course, it could be pandemic, they lost their job, they don't have money, or it could be due to drugs or abuse or whatever background we didn't know, so we couldn't control it. But the effect is something that I can do immediately. If the person is suffering now, I can do something that at least control the immediate suffering, though I may not be able to control all because of the other uncontrollable circumstances like climate or conditions or whatsoever that comes together with it. So I pick effect. Now, the second one, which do we have least control? Again, this will go back to causes. I couldn't control. I don't know the past. Like it could be, like I say, if pandemic, they lost their job. Straight away, they don't have the income, they can't feed their family, and I couldn't control that. So that will be the least control. And the third one, in our lives, which do we need to control the most? My answer will be consequences. We can control the consequences. Go back to the same example just now I said about this giving meals to the vulnerable people. Now, we are not just giving meals to the vulnerable people. That is the immediate effect, but we're actually giving them hope. Hope is the bigger effect. So today, now my stomach is full, so I feel there's hope for tomorrow. If my stomach is hungry now, I can't even think at all. I feel so angry and frustrated. I might even do certain bad things. I might go and steal. I might do bad things. But able to control the consequences, meaning that I can control the after effect of now, the stomach full. So I can help change their mindset, their perspective of seeing things, so that they don't go out and do bad things, so they can have harmonious within themselves or with their family and so on. So that will be my short answer. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. You convinced me. You convinced me. I do think that, just as Sharon said, we have control over the effect. I can do this right now. I can do this right now. I can turn off the computer right now, and I can change. I can control this effect, right? So very, very good. And I especially like the last one you mentioned, that you can feed it, but you want to give them a bigger one, which is what we need to put in the effort to control is the consequence. We hope everybody could feel grateful. We hope everybody could feel hope. That's what we want. That's what we need. And that's what's most important. It's not just the feeding, but it's something that we need to get everybody to extend their feelings and the effects. Okay, very good, Sharon. You're sold, your idea sold on me. All right, so we don't have much time. I still wanted to get through Tzu Chi and also YY. And if we can make it short, so can we have Sister Tzu Chi to share with everybody, and then we have YY to finish. Sister Tzu Chi, on the chat, you mentioned 1 to 4.
Brother,
Yes.
he can't hear, brother.
Hi.
She can't hear. Sister Tzu Chi can't hear. She's impairment.
Right. So thank you. That's what I'm seeing Sister Tzu Chi to typing. Okay. Is she able to share? No idea. Okay. That's fine. Okay. Well, we're going to come back to Tzu Chi if that's okay. But we're going to let's go to YY. Okay, let's go to YY. I apologize for not being sensitive enough to Tzu Chi's needs. I apologize. And let's have YY share, and then maybe Sister Tzu Chi will be able to type first.
Well, good day, Brother Joe, brothers and sisters. So the things that I have the most control over the things that I want to do. So for example, I make the decision to join the organization I want to work. But once I'm in it, I realize there's certain work culture built over the years, which is totally beyond my say. So some I like, but some I dislike. So what I need to do the most, of course, is to control my mindset, to manage my mindset. 转念, or Chinese, the saying, and this is embracing the teaching to master our mind instead of being controlled by the external conditions. So this is my little sharing.
Wow, that is very brief. You wrote a lot more on chat. So number 1, have the most control is the cause. Number 2, question, have the least control are the conditions. Number 3, need to control the most are the consequences, because we need to change the mindset. And that is what Sister YY shared with all of us at the very beginning. Okay, so Sister Yok Mei mentioned, and I think she said something very, very interesting. Cause and effect. My son play games. That is very direct. Okay, that is very direct. Very common challenge to all parents facing now. Children refuses to let go of their games. So Brother Joe, what can the parents do? Okay, that is a much bigger question for a much longer time. And I'm hoping that maybe next week I'll be able to get to that question. If time permits, I'll get to that question from Sister Yok Mei and about playing games. I think you can substitute play game with just about anything, because that's something that people get attached to. You can substitute the word play games with smoking. You can substitute it with doing, anything. And the whole idea is the same. How do you break a bad habit? Or how do you break away from something that you know is not good or right for another person? How do you help that person? It's the same thing it's the same idea. Okay, maybe the way we do it is different, but it's the same idea. So maybe we can, in the future, the next time we can explore that. But Sister Yomei, let's think about the cause, the effect, the conditions, and the consequences. Same thing as what everybody had already shared today. Why your son or why everybody else likes what they do or attached to this, why your son likes to play a game, that's in the past. The fact is he likes and he can't let it go. The condition is what you can do. You can either make playing game to be much suffering for him, in which case you also make it your own suffering, or you can make doing something else more worthwhile. That's what you can choose. The effect is maybe it's going to help him come out of it, or maybe it's going to help you come out of it and accept, or maybe it has no effect. Whatever the effect is, you put in the effort. You can't change why your son likes or not like to do certain things or like to do certain things. You can't change. That's already in the past. You can try to make the conditions favorable by making something more favorable or making the current thing not favorable. Or that's what we can do. But the one thing that we need to control the most, as almost everybody said today, are the consequences. The only thing we can do is to choose to accept. We put in all the effort that we can. Just do what is right. Just do what we can. Love him, give him what's needed, teach him, and allow him to grow, allow him to understand. So very briefly, just to respond, but it's not easy. I'm not trying to say that you should follow this and it will be all 100% done. It's not easy. And that is why our life is not just written in words. It's actually made up of actions. So once again, thank you. And my actions, once again, delay everybody. And my apologies. And my apologies to Sister Tzu Chi, who will eventually, I'm sure, is right now sharing in typing. And my apologies. And thanks to everybody who shared. And now I'm going to pass it over to Sister YY or Sister June for the next part of sharing. Thank you, Tzu Chi. Thank you.
And Brother Joe, brothers and sisters, for the wonderful session. Truly, these are cause, conditions, effect, consequences, interactions. Hopefully we can continue next Saturday. And today we have a very special Bodhisattva with us. She reminded me of today's Master's teaching, the true repayment of Buddha's grace. The Bodhisattva who received perfect teachings have only slight confusions about the principles. One who manifests as unenlightened Bodhisattva, they seek the path to Buddhahood because they still have room for improvement. Then they are able to transform sentient beings. That's Sister June for us. Sister June's very dedicated volunteers. Though we are not from the same community, neither is Sister June my mentee, but each time if I ask for help in promoting vegetarianism, donations, or supporting our community charity sales, Sister June would immediately render her great effort, not only helping, but she'll go extra mile to do it. And we could see Sister June's presence everywhere in places where there are people saying, okay, let us welcome Sister June, who is patient today, and pray for smooth commissioning for Sister June. Over to you, Sister June.
Good morning, brothers and sisters, Masters of the Abode, and Brother Joe Huang. Thank you, Sister Tzu Chi, for the very kind words and introduction. First, let me share my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, Sister.
Okay, when Sister Tzu Chi asked me to share about this on this Saturday Dharma Hualien, I was thinking, what else can I share? I was thinking what to share that I can talk for 30 minutes. But very kind to Brother Joe for bringing out this cause, condition, effect, and consequence, which actually ties in very nicely to what I'm about to share today. Yeah. So the title of my sharing is a step to infinite doors, because that's what the whole Tzu Chi journey is all about. So this is basically my timeline in Tzu Chi. I've categorized it into 3 categories. And of course, the first, how we came in, take the first step is through education. That's PCBC for my children. And the next step is actually all the charity, community, volunteer, environmental protection, and humanistic culture. And this year, very grateful to have the opportunity to actually go into medical to serve as a volunteer in the when Jing Si Tang was being used as a PPV. Yeah. So this is how it all started. Yeah. The picture in the middle is actually of my home brother and Justin, that's our eldest. And my home brother did a very, very good job. Very grateful to have him to actually accompany Justin throughout the PCBC, although it's in Mandarin and he doesn't know a word of it. Yeah, so he's picked up along the way. He accompanied Justin for 3 years. And it was a very, very good, curriculum because they start them young on environmental protection. And they actually let them try a lot of things. Like even the Yuan Yuan, you know, all of them are asked to do something. And the first Yuan Yuan that I actually attended was the graduation of my son after his 3rd year. Yeah, very embarrassed to say that's the only time, because initially I was a very passive parent in the early years because I have a young baby at home. And when it came to Amanda's turn, I decided to accompany her because first it was English PCBC, and Amanda is a very strong-willed child, and she's a middle child. So I wanted to spend more time with her after, because she feels a bit neglected at that point when we had the youngest, Amelia. So this class provided actually a very good bonding session for myself and Amanda. Yeah, so the first time I experienced the washing of the feet, it was very, very touching. And a lot of parents shed tears at that point as well. So it was just, you know, before Tzu Chi, you never thought that such thing is possible. And, you know, and also the Fujian, they have a chance to actually go and take part to clean Jing Hall. And the finale of PCBC, they actually design costumes using recyclables. And actually Amanda got to showcase the talent. She designed the wings for the costume. And for her, it's actually a very good experience throughout the whole PCBC because she gets to realize how blessed she is as she did the visits to the old folks home, to the children's. I think she went to the orphanage as well. So then she realized how blessed she is. She even raised funds. She did fundraising for Indonesia at that point in a shopping complex with my home brother. And it came to Penang flood. My home brother and I actually had an opportunity to drive up to Penang. We didn't follow the group. It was a last-minute decision. It was a day trip. It was total. This was the flood site at that point where they moved all the garbage. This was, I believe, was already cleaned up because we went about, I think, a couple of days after the flood. Initially, it was a lot worse. I think it was easily double the amount of trash. Yeah. So we drove a 4-wheel truck, 4x4, and then the truck was thankfully used as a supply truck. We went there early and we asked the brother or the team there if there's anything that we can do. So he said, okay, since you guys have a big car, come with me because they need to go and purchase water and bread and some of the cleaning utensils for the volunteers before they arrived. And I've never seen so many buns in my entire life. We packed, I think, easily about 600 in the car. Yeah. And the picture on the middle is taken at the end of the trip. It was very, very tiring, but it was worth every minute and every second of it. And our truck was also used to send supply and also drinks to volunteers. So my home brother was tying up the Tzu Chi flag so that the volunteers would recognize this. And the picture on the right, it shows a very good spirit because we have a lot of volunteers all over the peninsula and also from Singapore. There's a spirit of Gotong Royong. Gotong Royong in Malay actually means togetherness. It's from the village. The spirit came from the village, togetherness in cleaning up. And yeah, there is love actually amidst the impermanence. Yeah, because you see volunteers, even when they're eating their lunch, they're actually standing up because there's just no place. And also there is a story of a Malay Pakcik. He actually was very devastated because his entire house was wrecked by the flood. Everything had to be thrown away. When we arrived at his house to try and start cleaning, he was just sitting there looking a bit sad, a bit depressed. So when he saw us started cleaning his place, you know, that volunteers don't know from out of nowhere, you know, cleaning without asking for anything in return, that sort of woke him up. Then he started joining us to clean, and then towards the end, he even offered us drinks. And then when we moved to the next house, he actually came along with us to move, to also clean up his neighbor's house. So that was actually a very, very good thing. This is actually a circle of love, I believe. Yeah. And also what Tzu Chi means to us is actually family bonding time. Yeah. During pre-COVID days, we actually do involve the kids in a lot of Tzu Chi activities, especially during the PCBC class, where Justin and myself would serve as our little helper and volunteer, while Daddy and Amanda goes for class. Amelia would sometimes come along. I remember there was once she even performed at the Yuan Yuan sign language and a play. Yeah, and I think just now Sister Yok Mei mentioned about his son playing games. Every parent faced the same thing. I too have that same issue with Justin. But the thing is this: I try to control the consequence, as in to get him more involved in Tzu Chi activities, to do what he likes to do, find an avenue in Tzu Chi that is it's similar to playing games for him to actually work on or volunteer, so that he actually has the extra avenue to have to make good affinity with other people besides playing games. Yeah, this is something that you can try. And also during all the fundraising, we wanted the kids to know that the school was actually built is a amassing of effort by all the volunteers. So whenever every charity event that we have, we would volunteer ourselves as well as our kids. Yeah, from the charity sale where we were helping the Tui Fu Mama selling flowers, to mooncake making last year, where we made sure the kids went, and also the mooncake folding boxes. So these are the activities, but however, it's just unfortunate that it's COVID at the moment that these cannot be done. And I've also formed very, very good affinity during mooncake making last year. I actually went during one of my day off to ask if they need volunteers inside. I went about 4 something. It was quite late. And then this volunteer was saying, yes, can you please hold on? Let me go and find out whether they need any. Because usually they finish the shift at about 5. I went about 4 something. Then they said, yes, they actually need people at the QC department. QC department works till late every night. Yeah. That's when they have to wait for the mooncake to come out to check that everything is okay, to make sure before packing. So this is actually a very good job. I get to finish my day job and go there and volunteer every single night. And I formed very, very good affinity with a lot of sisters there. We even showed up at the last day, without asking, without the organizer asking for it, to make sure that the whole place is cleaned up. And we also involve parents of Tzu Chi International School and also our children to help out during this mooncake making process. And education, the mission of education is something that my home brother and I shared a very deep affirmation for. Yeah, and Justin made it as the pioneer batch to TCISKL. But prior to him going into the school, we actually enrolled Amelia in the Ta'ai Kindi, because we were really sold after the PCBC education process that we wanted our youngest to have to go through this process. Yeah. The picture on the left shows that during the term start, I actually went along with the children to volunteer in the school as well, since I was on leave. So I said, okay, they go to school and I go and help out during the uniform process. So this is how we incorporate Tzu Chi activities into our daily lives as well. Yeah. And environmental protection, the picture on the left, that's the only recycling day that we have this year, and I'm so glad to be part of it. Most Saturdays we'll spend our time in the recycling center, myself and my 2 girls. So I bring them there rather than them spending time playing on the computer. We get active together, and they actually enjoy, because it's a place that they can run. Even though it's MCO, we follow strict SOP, and it's outdoors. It's not confined spaces. And the best way to do environmental protection is actually promoting vegetarianism. Yeah. I started full-fledged adopting a vegetarian diet in March last year during the MCO. But of course, during then, I started cutting down meat and also eating more vegetarian meals, partly because also of my mother's cancer. So when I convinced my mom to also adopt a vegetarian diet, our whole family became 90% vegetarian. With the only other 2% is my son and my father. My two girls are all vegetarian. And Amelia's Kindy actually did a vegetarianism promotion in Ta'ai. They did a very, very good job. And when the English group gathering committee approached us, we said, yes, we will do it. Again, family bonding time. Justin was behind the camera, and we did a video to do a vegetarian dish to promote it during the English group, to do a sharing at the English group weekly committee. And I also had a very good opportunity to take part on a 21-day challenge, which is the whole food plant-based diet with my parents. Yeah, of course, my mom was very supportive. My dad wasn't too pleased, but I'm glad he went throughout the 21-day challenge. This is actually a very, very good program, and I really encourage sisters and brothers, if you have not done it, try at least one time. Yeah, know how cooking with less oil, less sugar, less salt, it can actually have a lot more taste than you can imagine. Okay, this is the Ta'ai anniversary when they did the Qi Dao song. I've also had very, very blessed affinity to be able to take part in it. This shows the beauty of uniformity during the whole process. And also speaking of Ta'ai, we've actually installed Ta'ai TV when my mom was diagnosed with cancer in November 2019. We wanted her to have the right view and positive spirit to help her go through the whole process. She's now an avid follower of Master during the, especially when it comes to Dharma and also the various stories of the grassroots of the Cao Puti. She enjoys those shows. And I've also switched from watching drama, K-drama, whatever drama, to Thai drama, because it's actually the story about real life person that you can relate. And all those stories make a very, very deep impression. And I usually watch it with my children. And Amelia has actually had a very deep impression of this boy by the name of Una, who's featured in Reindeer Walls. She actually started accumulating, putting money in the bamboo bank on a daily basis because she wanted to help children like Una, who's from the poorest region of Sabah in Malaysia. And of course, the charity visits such as CBI, the refugees, and also K1K. This is the program that KL Selangor branch launched at that point of when we had the first MCO. Very, very blessed to have the opportunity to walk into the lives of the people to realize how blessed we truly are. And the photo on the right is a lady that she used to be our K1K recipient. When she adopted a bamboo bank during this year, when I delivered food supply to her, she remembered to bring along the bamboo bank to say that she wanted to donate it back to the other people who need help. Very, very touching story, and there are many others like her. How to show us that, from a receiver, people can actually be a giver if we only help them realize their blessings. And throughout the entire MCO, we've had the affinity to get involved in a lot of things because of our close proximity to Jing. This was when they started making PPE. I remember on that day, that was Gong Xiu. So we went early, but we tuned in online, ensuring that we adhere to social distancing while doing the PPE. And of course, this year, when Jing was used as the PPV, was very, very blessed again to be able to take part in under the registration team. Yeah. So we actually did in a total of 10 weeks for this. So it allows to practice the putting whatever Dharma into practice, because people who comes are non-Tzu Chi volunteers, and sometimes they could be people who are of different race and faith, or even non-Malaysians. So sometimes language could be really a real big challenge. And being at the registration counter, you have to be patient. And there's plenty of opportunity to promote vegetarianism and also to use skillful means. Yeah. And this was a last minute assignment. I was called up that morning by a community volunteer to ask if I'm available. It was during a public holiday, and they needed a volunteer to man the desk for walk-ins. Yeah, at the traffic team. So this again, it's very nice feeling to know that Tzu Chi Jingsi Hall is the preferred location for a lot of people staying around our area, around Jingsi Hall, and also they come from quite far away just because they wanted to be vaccinated at Jingsi Hall. And of course, the various food packing from collaboration with Tzu Chi International School for EMCO areas, and also for refugee school. Yeah, this is the beauty of teamwork, speed, at the speed and not forgetting the humanistic culture in terms of packing for food, because to make sure that everything is nicely packed and it forms a shape. Yeah. And the past few weeks, I've been involved also in food care. This is for the lower income group to make sure that they have all the enough food supplies on a weekly basis. And the food that is supplied to them is actually very, very good quality and very, very mindful of the committee to think of having different color vegetables and fresh fruits and vegetables and a healthy diet. And at the end of the day, no one gets left behind. Even for those recipients who cannot come physically to the food care to collect their food packages, we do delivery. Of course, we adhere to very, very strict SOP. And the picture on the right is the distribution of vouchers, food care vouchers to refugees as well. So at the end of the day, Tzu Chi is a place where we always have avenue to learn new things. We just need to have the willingness and be open to participate and ever ready to serve. Grateful for having so much fields of blessings to sow, partly due to the proximity of location of where we are from Jingsi Hall. Yeah. And also the prayer session has also been a daily routine already, as well as the book study. So I find myself drawn to the study of Dharma, because the more I listen, I feel like there's a lot more that I don't know. So every time for this, I keep going back to learn more and more. Yeah, it's like an onion. The more you peel, you want to go inside another layer. That's how I feel the Dharma is. And it's a very practical approach also to adopt the Dharma teachings in our daily lives. Yeah, even though I'm not Buddhist. Okay, so my benefactors, of course, are my parents and also my family for being ever so supportive, and also Master Cheng for founding Tzu Chi, and of course my mentors who actually, mindfully guide me along this path, and the many, and the entire Tzu Chi family as well. And the key takeaways is we can only go through the masses and get involved in activities. That's the greatest lessons and the greatest opportunities for becoming a better version of ourselves. And before I end, I would like to share the story of a Jingsi herbal tea. 2 days ago, I have a friend, a colleague who's been admitted to Sungai Buloh Hospital because he was lacking oxygen. So on that day itself, I found out through one of the volunteers on how to send the Jingsi tea to him. And within 2 days, his oxygen level actually went up to above critical level, to better than critical level, because before that he was borderline. And his wife's fever is completely gone after drinking the tea as well. They're both COVID positive at that point. And also, in short, Tzu Chi is a world without strangers. Very happy to make the right step in a path which has opened up to infinite doors of endless possibilities. And like what Brother Joe said, I feel like the most things that I can control, the most control that I have is the consequence. That's why through taking this path, it fits and aligns to what our lives should be. Yeah. And lastly, to end, I would like to quote a Jingsi aphorism in Mandarin, 就是服从做中得欢喜，会从善解得自在。感恩 That's the end of my sharing.
Thanks to Sister June. I think you definitely made the best of all the time that you can have, especially even though it's MCO. I really like and admire when you said that that when you're talking about the recycling, about environmental protection, and you said that there was only one time so far because of MCO, and you were there. And I keep on that sentence, that phrase kept on resonating in my mind, because I was thinking, well, if we are well, what would I say if I said that there was only one time but I wasn't there? And how will I say I have control over the consequences? So I think on that part, I think that's something that I really like and admire, is that you definitely took all your effort and every moment to do what is right. Just like what Brother Robert said, right? And no matter what happens, just do what is right. Particular things that I wanted to respond. You talked about your son, Justin, and how he also likes to play games. I like how you respond also to Sister Yokmei's question about son like to play games. You also mentioned that the one thing that we could do is to make doing Tzu Chi to be more favorable, to be something more interesting, so that it's almost like you're not stopping, but you gave him a much better alternative. And I think on many, many levels, that's what we do with our lives too. We are doing one or the other. Now, you can't just drop doing something, but you can make doing the alternative to be more favorable. And I think that that's the attitude that we can try to have. And that is to put in more effort on the condition and put in more effort on the affinity, and trying to sway or control, or not control is almost like a bad word, but to sway or to influence and to guide toward the other way. And then lastly, you talk about doing the mooncake. And even though that you come late because you come after your work, but that's something that you choose and something that you can do. And I find that to be very admirable once again, because imagine for all the people there, they didn't know that you were going to come late, right? They have their time schedule. And for them, your arrival is something that's out of their control. But what they can control is they can happily receive you and happily slot you into something that you could make the effort for. Once again, and you have no control over the time. They can end early. You can go during noontime, or you can go in the morning. You can't, because your work. You can't control that. But you can control the part that is after work, which you done very well. And lastly, I wanted to talk about doing the QC for mooncake. Is that like tasting? Because I do a lot of QC here too.
Tasting is to make sure that the packaging is okay,
Okay. Then our QCs are very different. There is a very big difference with our definition of what it is. And I'm sure that's very different from the QC our masters here are too, because I always get the not so quality ones, and my job is to eat it. And that's my QC. So I would like to say that I also contributed to the very great effort here at the abode for the mooncake and all the other cakes making, because I put in the effort to make sure I eat the ones that are not looking so good, but they taste so yummy. Anyway, that is the sharing for today. Thank you, Sister June. You are indeed our role models in taking every second and making the best of it. And not just that, but also making it such a favorable decision, making it such a favorable alternative for your family. So for your husband, for your home brother, your son and your daughter, right? You have your son and a daughter, right? Your 2 kids. Okay.
3 kids.
Oh, three kids. Okay, 3 kids. And making it so that it's a family event for everybody to participate. Wonderful. I think it's definitely something that we should all be very happy, and we should all be very something that we can all learn from. Thank you, Sister June. Thank you, everybody.
Brother Joe for the wonderful session and Sister June for the wonderful sharing. Yeah, one more thing. Sister June is very filial. I remember I went to her house a few times. I could see that the parents, of course, SOP still wear masks, passing something to her. She's very filial, both her and the home brother, very filial to the elderly, and could see the elderly are at peace and assured at home. That's why that's also one of the reasons I'm thinking why the children can be so filial and join her to do Tzu Chi works. Such is the lessons I'm learning from Sister June.感恩 to Sister Yvonne for suggesting Sister June to share with us today. Very grateful. Sister June is also helping on the with the translation team. Indeed, Sister June is everywhere.感恩, both Brother Joe, Sister June, and all the brothers sisters for today's heartfelt and wisdom sharing. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your presence. And hope that each of us will sustain Dharma joy and take in another piece of Dharma Master and Hualien love to our life. To those who still have your insights on today's sharings, you could either post to one of us, we could share it with Brother Joe, or hopefully next week, maybe we could have another session on this